I want to send some well wishes to Brian Skoski, who wasn't able to be here today. He's a little under the weather. So I just want to start by going into a moment of meditation. I want us to think about our connection with the earth a little bit deeper in our minds and just get a little peaceful and centered before we go into today's message. So I invite you just to close your eyes, to get comfortable in your chairs wherever you are. If you're at home lying in your bed, that's okay too, if that's where you're watching us from this morning. Just get comfortable and relax. Start to relax your body and focus on your breath. As you remember last week, we talked about the breath having trillions of atoms that we exchange with other life forms throughout our lifetime. So just breathe that life-sustaining air. This air that is filled, that is sometimes described as the very breath of God or the very breath of the divine. Know your connection here. We're inside these four walls, but nature still surrounds us. We have a couple of plants in the room. And when we leave here today, we'll have an opportunity to go out those doors and enjoy the sunlight, enjoy the warmth of the day, enjoy some nature, whether we're just driving back to our house or we're actually stopping to pause. So here in our minds, let's stop to pause. I invite you to consider, what is the natural setting, the environment outdoors that brings you the most peace? And I invite you to bring that into your mind's eye. Maybe that's just sitting on your porch in the mornings, listening to the bird song. Maybe that's walking out on the beach or by our local bay. Maybe that is just taking a hike in nature. Or maybe you take some walks in some of our local state parks. Maybe you just sit at a park bench or on a swing. What is that like for you? And I want you to imagine, with your power of imagination, your power to visualize, that you are sitting or walking or you are present in that space. And then I invite you just to be aware of the presence of God in all life in that space. From the very nature of the soil, the nutrients, the insects that make their home in the soil, the fungi in the soil, the blades of grass, the trees, the plants, the wildlife, the birds flying overhead. Every bit of it is filled with divine energy, divine spirit, and we are connected to it all. As you visualize more of this space and more of your connection to it, I invite you to go into the quiet of that space for just a few moments here today. Continuing with the breath, continuing with our visualization of that space that brings us peace. Let us enter the silence for just a few minutes here today. Enter the the silence. As we breathe in this breath of life, this breath of light, let us affirm we are one with all life. We here, every person present in this room is connected. Every person in our larger community is connected. Every person in the world is connected to this glorious sacredness of life. And in this sacredness, in our awareness of our sacredness, of our connection with life, we bring forth more of that spiritual understanding that God is present everywhere, every moment, in every walk we take in nature, and every time we pause to enjoy the smell of a flower or a butterfly on a leaf. Every moment we enjoy the raindrops falling from the clouds or the warmth of the sun on our skin. We are connected and God is present. As we breathe into this awareness, I invite you to bring just gentle movement back to your body. Maybe wiggling fingers and toes. Maybe allowing for gentle movement of your wrist or your ankles, maybe even your shoulders or your neck. And then when you're ready, I invite you to open your eyes. I'm going to start today with a question. This is from a piece called One with Nature, written by Unity Minister Reverend Margaret Flick, and she asks the following question: do we know we are walking on sacred ground, breathing the breath of the divine, and drinking from the holy waters of spirit? We might know it now because we just went through a meditation where we connected. How many times do you walk in nature maybe and forget that you're that connected? Forget that you are walking on sacred ground, that every step you take, be it walking around your neighborhood, walking in a state park, walking on the beach, is sacred ground. Why is it sacred? It's sacred because divine life flows through it. And it's sacred all the more because you, as a divine expression, are present in that moment and aware of its sacredness. So today I want to invite you to consider the power of our connection. And I'm not talking about the connection that we get from these devices, right? These tend to distract us. These tend to leave us oftentimes in a state of anxiety, especially if we've been looking at the news or whatever's filtered in our algorithm. There are ways that you can adjust your algorithm, but it takes work. And then it takes an awareness, oh, that's something I don't want to keep looking at, to get it out of your algorithm sometimes, right? So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about our power to understand our connection, but understand it on a spiritual level. Last week I talked about the physical level, right? I talked about how we're interconnected to the earth. I talked a little bit about how we're breathing out so many trillions of atoms, and it really means something different when we think about loving our neighbor, when we're breathing out that much of ourselves in the room that we're sharing space in. I also talked about this idea of physically being connected to nature, of Shinrin-yoku, or this idea of forest bathing that the Japanese have studied, and this idea that when you go out in nature, there are actual health benefits from going out. Not just the breath that the trees are breathing out to us that give us more oxygen, right? But the actual chemical signatures, that smell of cedar, that smell of pine, that comes from a chemical signature in the tree, and the more we breathe those in, the more health benefits we get. But it's also being calm and present. So we have the capability of going out in nature, lowering our blood pressure, lowering our heart rate, reducing our kind of cortisol response. All this is possible. That's just on a physical level. Today I'm going to call attention, awareness to the spiritual. We are both and. I've talked about this lots of times. This is one of my favorite ideas about about coming out of principle 1 and principle 2, because if we are everywhere, if God is everywhere present and we are here and God's in us, and yet we are also human, then we are both and. So what does that mean to really bring this connection to a spiritual level? How are we allowing our connection with each other, with our earth, with the very nature of life itself, to move through us, to awaken us, to inspire us to new spiritual levels? So I'm also talking about a balance. I like the word balance. We all need balance in our lives. It looks different for each one of us, right? A balance between action and rest, a balance between our humanity and our balance between being able to eat what we want and maybe eat a little healthier, know when to stop eating the things that we so crave, right? There's balance in everything. So if we think about this balance, what does that look like spiritually for us? What does it look like to have this balance of humanness and spiritual practice out in nature? So I'm going to ask, when's the last time you took time out in nature? Did you do that this week for Earth Day? Did anybody invite the kind of Earth Day practice I spoke about last week where you took time out in nature? Nobody? A couple of you? Okay. A couple of you. All right. I want you to think about that, about whatever the last time was that you were in nature and how that felt. Because oftentimes we forget. So we'll go about our day and we're in our four walls or in the four doors of our car, whatever we're in, and we forget that we're connected. So I want you to remember, what did that feel like? So I'm going to share a little story that I went through recently that has brought this back into my awareness. So many of you may already know we had a water leak about a month ago. And with this water leak came a mitigation company that we had to call to get rid of the wet stuff that was in our house and get rid of, dry out the dampness. And with that came a dehumidifier and 4 industrial fans. Now, if you have ever thought that your house is relatively quiet, I can tell you that it is not with a dehumidifier and 4 industrial fans. Okay. So how many of you have like a little prayer place or a little meditation place in your house where you kind of sit and relax maybe and go into meditation or go into a spiritual understanding? Maybe that's where you do your reading at, your spiritual reading. Well, I want you to imagine for about a week, this was not going to be possible. The carpet was kind of tinted up. You're talking about a dehumidifier, 4 fans running. My favorite place is the recliner in the living room, which also has my heating pad. So usually my routine in the morning is I get up, I go sit on the recliner, I'll listen to usually a unity meditation, and then I'll go into like my own prayer practice and meditation practice after I do that. Sometimes I'll listen to the daily word first and then meditate, and then sometimes I'll listen to the daily word after. And so that's kind of my routine. I also enjoy my chocolate milk that time of the day. That's how I start my mornings. Now I want you to imagine that for that almost entire week, that was not going to happen. Melissa was getting a little cranky, and Chris was out of town, and I'm like, okay, something's got to give here. Like I'm not having my normal kind of usual quiet. Even back in the bedroom, I would close the door, just me and the cats. You could still hear the fans going. It was constant noise. So what did I do? I was like, okay, I'm going to go out. I'm going to go for a walk at the park by the Bailey Bridge. Anybody know that little park that's in Lynn Haven? And we have an old Bailey Bridge, so I'd actually start to walk the bridge as well. But part of that was actually taking one of my books and sitting on either a bench, they have a couple of benches there, or one of the swings. The swings are my favorite things to sit on, and just allowing myself to read and enjoy nature, enjoy the quiet. Yeah, sometimes I'd get distracted by a car, a really loud car coming over the bridge. Or there was at least one time during this time where the universe decided I needed to hear a leaf blower as part of this practice. But it brought my awareness to a couple of things. One, I needed to step out in nature more. That I've kind of lost part of that in the busyness of school and the busyness of running the congregation and the busyness of my leadership. Where did that time go? Why am I not taking advantage of that? But the other part of that is a reminder I can tune out the noise if I really need to. Yes, I can tune out the leaf blower. Yes, I can tune out the dehumidifier and the fans. Takes some practice to do, but it's a reminder I have that within me. So what does that look like for you? What is that connection with the earth? Now all of us have probably considered this, the amazing life that lives on our earth. But I'm going to share the words of Khalil Gibran because he talks about this in a poem titled Earth. Now, the poem itself is rather long, so I'm only going to include a few verses here. But it gives you an idea that even poets have thought about this idea of what is our connection with the earth. And so he says, if I can get to the right slide here, how perfect you are, earth, and how majestic. I have crossed your plains and climbed your mountains. I have gone down into your valleys and entered your caves. Right. On the plains I have discovered your dreams. On the mountains I have admired your splendid presence. And in the valleys I have observed your tranquility. Among the rocks I have felt your firmness. In the caves I have touched your mysteries. Think about the depth of this. You who are relaxed in your strength, haughty in your modesty, humble in your arrogance, gentle in your resistance, limpid in your secrets, I have crossed your seas, explored your rivers, and walked the banks of your streams. Here it gets really powerful. I have heard eternity. I have heard eternity speak through your ebb and flow, and the ages return the echoes of your melodies over your hillsides. I have heard life calling to itself in your mountain passes and along your valley slopes. So I'm going to ask again, how many of you have had an experience in nature that felt spiritual? Can I get pretty much everybody to raise their hands at this point, even if you haven't had a recent one? Have you ever had that feeling like, man, I'm connected to so much more? You feel connected, and at the same time, you feel like the smallest of threads in the tapestry of life. Maybe you're looking out over the ocean waves, or you're looking up at the stars, right? Have you ever got that feeling? They call it a lot of my teachers call it God bumps. When you feel the presence so much that the very hair on your arms or your legs raises, right? This is what we're talking about. So think about that. Have you heard eternity speak through the ebb and flow of nature? Have you experienced that? I know I have. Have you heard life calling to itself in your experience of nature? I know I have. And this is where it begins to get spiritual. Many way showers throughout the ages have turned to nature as part of their spiritual practice. I'm going to talk about 2, although technically throughout this talk I'm including 4, because I'm guessing Reverend Margaret Flick and Khalil Gibran also turned to nature, and so they're way showers in their own right. But the first one I'm going to talk about is the Buddha. Now, the Buddha is famous for achieving enlightenment under what? The Bodhi tree, right? He went out and he sought this in nature, not in the 4 walls of a temple, not in the 4 walls of some sort of house or building or structure. He sought it in nature. And if you've never read the story of his enlightenment, it's powerful. So the historical Buddha is known as Siddhartha Gautama. And he, it's said, went through several masters once he decided he was going to be on the path of enlightenment. And each one, he would learn a little bit, and then he would kind of plateau, and then he was like, okay, I'm kind of stuck again. I'm going to a different master. I'm going to learn a little bit, and then he kind of plateaus, and then he goes to another master. And the last one that he goes to, he's like, okay, I got to give everything up. I got to give up food and water. I got to take in just a very, very bare minimum to keep myself alive. He was emaciated. He was shriveled up. That's not really a way to live in spiritual awareness, right? And guess what? He got stuck again. He's like, okay, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. Well, he developed what he considers the middle path. But before he got there, he had to come into his own awareness. Instead of following somebody else's pathway, what somebody else chose for him, he said, I remember a time when I was a kid where I just sat under the most beautiful tree, and it was so peaceful and it was so calm, and I just went into this meditative state. I'm going to try that. And that's what he did. So he went and he got under the Bodhi tree, and he was determined to sit there under the Bodhi tree until he achieved enlightenment. He did it in nature, with the support of shade, with the support of adequate food and water at this point, nutrition to support him, a kind of balanced approach to this. And that is when he found enlightenment. Now, it's interesting because here you'll see that part of the Buddha, and a lot of statues of the Buddha's enlightenment will show his right arm touching the ground. So he'll be in a little seated posture, and his right hand is like touching the ground. This is called, it's a mudra called touching the ground. And what it references is that in the midst of his enlightenment, as he was battling his ego mind, the inner thoughts, what is often referred to as Mara, like this, the fears, the resentments, the judgment, all these kind of cravings and desires that he had, as he was battling this and learning to control his thoughts, he got the thought. It said that Mara had one last trick, whispered in his ear, "Who do you think you are?" How many of you have heard that when you're on your spiritual pathway? Well, just, you're making progress, and then, who do you think you are? That can knock you for a loop, can it? When your ego does that? When ego comes out and says, personality comes out and says, do you really have the right way forward? Are you really traveling the right path? Well, the Buddha, he didn't respond in fear. He didn't respond in judgment. He simply touched the earth, and the earth witnessed his awareness and his awakening. He touched the earth. The earth trembled, and Mara, like that, was defeated. Think about that. How powerful that story is. That through the presence of being out in nature, he developed a way to go within that allows him to get away from judgment and fear. And that is the pathway he taught. Now, you might be familiar with another way shower who did something a little similar. Jesus on the mountainside. How many of you have heard the story of Jesus getting baptized, and then the first thing he does is he goes out into the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights, and he's tempted by something that sounds a lot like Mara, right? So if we think about the devil or we think about Satan, we can think about this as kind of a metaphor for the ego mind, for the personality that wants to come forward and wants to guide us instead of our spiritual center guiding us. It's tempting with power. It's tempting with, you must know the right way. You're all, you could do this. Well, do you really know the right way? Maybe you have some doubts now. I'm going to sow some seeds of doubts. We all know what happens when this comes into our minds, right? We've heard this. But Jesus went out into the wilderness. But that wasn't the only time. There are several references to Jesus going to the mountainside, or Jesus going away to a quiet place where he could pray. And so one of these stories talks about where Jesus is determining who his disciple is going to be. And it says, now during those days. Look at that word, days. I don't take this as a singular time he did this. Now during those days, he went out to the mountain to pray, and he spent the night in prayer to God. He was going out in prayer to get centered in nature, right? He wasn't doing this in the four walls of a temple. Oftentimes when it's talked about him going to pray, it is him being outside, him being alone in the quiet, in the silence, in the stillness of the presence. So this is what we're invited to do, right? By living our connection, we're invited to not just have a prayer and meditation practice, but to practice these things when we're out in nature, to build on whatever nature practice we have, and to go out and spend more time witnessing the presence in nature, feeling our connection with nature. So I want you to consider for a moment, what was the place that came up for you in the meditation we did, that we visualized? What is stopping you from doing that, from going to that place a little more often? What is that for you? What is your Bodhi tree? What is your mountainside? What is the place where you can go to experience the quiet, experience the silence, maybe hear some bird song, maybe hear the wind through the trees, maybe hear a little bit of the waves of the surf. Where is that for you where you can experience that? That is what I want to invite you to do. That is what I want you to remember connection looks like. So, as you're contemplating this, I'm going to share the full passage from Reverend Margaret Flick, because she really asks us a powerful question at the end of this. It's a bunch of questions, but she asks us a powerful question. So in her poem or contemplative writing on One with Nature, she says, "The gift of life has placed us on this breathtakingly beautiful planet. Do we know we are walking on sacred ground, breathing the breath of the divine and drinking from the holy waters of spirit?" She goes on to say, "Do we experience this divine connection with all creation?" And if you say no to that part, that's your invitation. Do we feel the healing presence of the forest and the sacred redwood groves? Whatever those redwood groves are for you, it might be pine trees, and that's okay. We have a lot of those here. She goes on to say, do we feel the power of the ocean? Do we see the divinity in all the animals, including us? That's a tough one, right? Sometimes. Ego, she says, tells us we are separate from nature. Spirit tells us we are one. What do we believe and act from? That is your choice. That is the question that I invite you to take home with you today. If ego is telling you you are separate from nature or separate from others or separate from God, and spirit tells you you are one, which one do you believe and act from? I want to appreciate you, each of you, for your attention here today and for allowing me to give this impromptu message on living your connection. Namaste.
That was perfect for April, for Earth Day, wasn't it? And it brought back memories from me. I read Siddhartha in high school. That was a long, long time ago. But I also remember buying the book in later years for Walker to read, so he would understand that. So that's just wonderful. Thank you so much again, Melissa, for that beautiful message. So now it's time to enter into generosity consciousness. We want to thank everybody who has continued to bless this community with your tithes and offerings, because as you know, we wouldn't be here if it were not for that. We couldn't pay the rent, right? So we're truly blessed by your giving. Now, if you feel led by Spirit today to give, we invite you to prepare your gift now. And if you are being led to make an online donation today, you can use the convenient PayPal QR code or visit our website. Or if you want to make a continuing donation, you can also do that through your personal financial institution. But right now, we invite you to hold the thought of your gift in your mind and your heart. And in just a moment, we're going to say our offering blessing. There we go on the screens in the front and the back. Together. Divine love flowing through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And so it is. Amen. Thank you so much.
We are one in the Spirit, we are one every day. We are one in the Spirit, we are one all the way. And we know that our unity is always here to stay. And we'll know we are family by our love, by our love. Yes, they'll know we are family by our love. We will work with each other, we will work side by side. We will work with each other, we will work side by side. And we'll guard each one's dignity and lay disputes aside. And they'll know we are family by our love, by our love. Yes, we'll know we are family by our love. We will walk with each other, we will walk hand in hand. We will walk with each other, we will walk hand in hand. And together we'll spread the news that God is in our land. And they'll know we are family by our love, by our love. Yes, they'll know we are family by our love.
All righty. Thank you, Unity Singers. Thank you again, Melissa, for your powerful message and your meditation as well. And Rose, I gotta say, you did a great job with the message on the green consciousness. That's very good. And they're going to show the video after the service today, right? So it's only a minute or two long. So if you want to, 1 minute. So if you stay after we finish our peace song and prayer for protection, they'll show that 1 minute video if you haven't seen it yet. So we're ready to get into our circle and sing our peace song together. Can we get all the way